Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. We have news, some sad news that we didn't want on this morning, which is that Rafa Nadal has pulled out of Wimbledon and the Olympics. He announced on his social media platforms, quote, "Hi all, I've decided to not participate in this year's championships at Wimbledon and the Olympic Games in Tokyo. It's never an easy decision to take, but after listening to my body and discussing it with my team, I understand that it is the right decision. The goal is to prolong my career and continue to do what makes me happy. That is to compete at the highest level and keep fighting for those professional and personal goals at the maximum level of competition. The fact that there has only been 2 weeks between RG and Wimbledon didn't make it easier on my body to recuperate after the always demanding clay court season. These have been 2 months of great effort, and this decision I take is focused looking at the mid and long term, and then I will end it there. So let's just go reactions, Amy, to Nadal deciding that he's listening to his body and not going to play Wimbledon or the Olympics.
As a fan, I am disappointed, but the good news is this probably means that for sure he'll play the U.S. Open, barring any, strange situation, injury in practice or something like that. That's probably what he's pointing toward. If you're a Djokovic fan, this is really good news because, forget the surface for a minute and who's good on what surface. He is a champion at Wimbledon. Nadal has won Wimbledon, and it clears the way for Djokovic, and he will be even more of a favorite now.
Yeah, they summed it up pretty well. I mean, again, it's fun to watch Nadal play anywhere. I mean, he's played some great matches at Wimbledon, won it twice, been to the finals 3 other times. He and Novak played one of the greatest matches in their whole rivalry there in 2018. That was just fantastic, but with the roof and all this other kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, but we get it. I mean, this is the aging and even the pandemic and travel and all these kind of concerns. So Rafa just being pragmatic, and that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is good that the heart is in the right place, and it kind of tells you that, Nadal is still thinking about, well, right now, 2022. He's thinking about 2023. This is not a short-term kind of thought process, which is a good sign for everyone. And, but at the same time, and I hate to make everything about comparison, but doesn't Novak Djokovic seem miles away from having to do stuff like this? It just seems like where his body is at, and they're a year apart. And of course, we know that Nadal came onto the tour at the highest level a little bit earlier than Djokovic, who was a later bloomer. And we know about Rafa's play style and how difficult that was, and all the injuries he's had. But with all of that being said, it just feels like Novak, who's only a year younger than Nadal, is a lot younger when it comes to mileage, and this kind of illustrates that once again.
Cut back to the 4th set of their great semi in Paris just last week, and you could see how fresh Novak was still in that 4th set and how worn out Nadal was. I mean, it's just a testimony to both Novak's fitness, but also, Nadal, just an unbelievable competitor, throws himself heart and soul into the clay court season, played 20 matches over the course of the spring, and but this also gets to the technique, to the efficiency of the whole way Novak plays, and everybody knows how draining Nadal's playing style is on him.
On the positive note for Nadal fans, if you are a Nadal fan, this is a snapshot in time of where the 3 of these guys are right now. There have been years where Djokovic was not right with his body. I mean, he had to have the elbow surgery, and Nadal has had lulls before. I think the good news is, as they have gotten older and with experience, they've become much better at managing their schedules. And the calendar in tennis is the most brutal of any sport. And they are the masters at managing their bodies through that challenging calendar.
Yeah, and you see, look how Roger for several years managed the European clay court season, even this year, and the several years where he didn't even play Roland Garros. So yeah, they're just it's going to be. I'll be interested to see then how Novak does it, because he hasn't done, other than the injuries, he hasn't done any kind of like a preemptive. I'm not going to play this swing. I'm not going to do this. I'm going
Right.
to do that. He's pretty much maintained the attendance at the majors, except when he got hurt during them. And I guess Amy's so right. It is a brutal, long calendar, and it's an individual sport. So it's not like you can be in the late phase of your career, be in the game for only a few minutes and take a breath. So again, I will miss Scott. I've seen some. Remember a great match, Nadal and Del Potro at Wimbledon, Nadal and Novak, of course, the great final with Roger. And it's always fun. I think it's always interesting to watch a player have to solve problems on their lesser favored surface. I mean, good, he's been to the finals 5 times, but still, grass was not his natural language the way it was for Federer, just like seeing Federer on clay. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're starting to see this more in all sports. And just to zoom out a little bit, we have NBA players skipping regular season games. We have baseball players, which I know nobody cares about outside of the United States, but pitchers are not throwing as many pitches. Um, I wonder if it's happening in cricket. I wouldn't know though that. However, but it's just we've reached a new era of valuing rest and off time and recovery time. I think to like just a much greater extent. And I just think that, if you're an Nadal fan and, you're down about this decision, or I'm sure if you're Nadal and you're down about having to make this decision, the caveat is you don't get to play until you're 35 into year 36. You don't get to play that long unless you make these kinds of decisions. Is that fair?
I would agree, but maybe there's all this knowledge of sports science and how we manage time, and so maybe a player in his 20s starts to think about his schedule that way too. So he doesn't just go full tilt. And so maybe when a player, maybe Seb Korda, when he becomes 24 years old, already starts to think about how to manage his calendar and his schedule. And maybe that even has implications for which majors some of these guys play, even if they're automatically entered in them and they risk something else. I mean, there's so much physical management and so much more science than it was even 20 years ago. I mean, that's I think one of the biggest legacies of this three will be kind of the scientific management of their game and equipment and training and all this kind of stuff.
It's interesting, though, for the Olympics, if you're a Djokovic fan and you want to see him go for the Golden Slam, Rafa is not going to be at the Olympics either. So that makes it that much easier for Djokovic to contend for this amazing prize, which he's still in the race for.
That's a great point. But also, like I think the Olympics for Novak to look ahead for that. That's the sizzling hot, impassioned opponent. In other words, if I was looking ahead at Novak's draw at the Olympics, I'd be more worried about a flaming hot Berrettini than the normal business. I mean, Nadal's won the Olympics, so if they met up in a late stage, that would be a tremendous final. But the Olympics has so much about that emotional aspect, that passion aspect, and it's kind of a one-off. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Novak, I can't see him not wanting to go to the Olympics, of course. So he'll
No way.
do that.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
High priority for him.
High priority.
We've
now,
discussed that.
That's right. Granted, in the legacy of the sport, I think the Olympics is a great event if you win it. I'm never going to look back at Federer and say, "Oh yeah, Roger, he never won singles at the Olympics." It's a no lose. It's like an elective course in the major. So no one.
I do always think of Steffi Graf, though, the fact that she did win that Golden Slam.
Absolutely.
It's like a pretty cherry or a pretty flower to put on top of the cake. So, and it's something that you never forget in conversation.
Well, it adds, and like you said, you talked about I was thinking like an exclamation point, like something, a special kind of punctuation. It showed how unbelievably dominant. She lost 2 matches that year. And that's a neat little convergence of things. And if Novak could make that happen, that would be pretty amazing too. So
well, the people the people running the IOC think Andy Murray is just the clear-cut GOAT. And, they only watch tennis every 4 years. No one's told them about the other three guys who have, the other people, but
And the other
we'll
32
just, we'll
slams
just
that
let
we
him
played.
be. Yeah.
Right.
We'll just let him be. Murray with the two singles gold.
Yeah, he's Michael Phelps. That Murray is like the Michael Phelps of tennis because he wins the Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more surprised that if we're comparing the Olympics and Wimbledon, I'm more surprised that Nadal pulled out of the Olympics. But I do think it's interesting that different players have different level of priorities for that event. But for Rafa, Wimbledon's just this very quick turnaround, and he mentioned it in his statement that it's 2 weeks and he doesn't feel like he's ready. But the Olympics are further out, and he loves representing his country and dominates when he brandishes the Spanish flag and takes the court. The Davis Cup record, 1 loss in his career in Davis Cup, and I think over 30 wins. He really plays really well. So I'm a little bit surprised at the Olympics thing. But I also think you're right, Amy. It does kind of set up for the U.S. Open, and it looks like if Novak wins Wimbledon, they'll all go into it with 20 slams, and it might be a really, really hotly contested event.
I think I think the Olympics and Rafa making a decision was just look, I want the whole time off. I don't want to just wait till Wimbledon and then decide. Right. August 8th, I think, is the next tournament is Canada, so he wants to that's barely 6-7 weeks. So let me decompress completely and not have to even think about a tricky trip to Tokyo. We still don't know what's happening with the Olympics, whether it's things with quarantines and all the pandemic stuff. So I think I've done pretty good in the Olympics, but then again, that creates some significant wear and tear implications for the U.S. Open.
Yeah, it's going to be rough from what I understand on the athletes. The quarantine situation, the rollout of the vaccine in Japan has not been what it is in the United States and other parts of Europe. So it's actually not going to be comfortable or easy for Novak. If anybody's up to the task, he is, but it's going to be a real pain. So you can understand why Rafa made the decision that he did. But again, I think it's actually good news for the US Open, and it could be a real showdown there.
Yeah, hey, fantastic points there, because we've seen Nadal kind of have his qualms about going into these highly quarantined and uncertain environments like last year's US Open, which he decided not to play and prepare for the clay season. So an excellent point there. Tokyo, it's an event that Djokovic played last year. Pretty quick hard court, definitely in Novak's favor when it comes to conditions. But we will discuss the Olympics more, I'm sure, at a later date. Let's get to Roger Federer, who, of course, we thought we'd lead the show with this, but then Nadal happened. But Federer lost to Felix Auger Aliassime in 3 sets. Another roadblock for Roger. What's the temperature on this? Where's the panic meter at, Joel?
I don't think I never think of panic. I don't think good, bad. I just think these are things that happen. This is the game. I mean, this is why I like writing about sports rather than politics. This is performance. I mean, it was a pretty it wasn't the greatest tennis from Roger. He'd be the first to admit that. And it was and the thing, grass is so interesting. You got to really have it on grass. I've always thought grass is the one you don't necessarily need a lot of match play, but it usually assumes that you've had match play throughout the course of the year. That usually by the time you start playing on grass in June, players played 20, 30, however many matches. But here's Federer, he's so under match played. And so some of those instincts, that movements, I mean, in grass is so much about fast kind of points, even contemporary grass, which is slower than it used to be. And so Roger just looked a little out of sorts. What did you take away from that, Amy?
Well, unlike you, I kind of did hit the panic button. After the match yesterday, I was like, what? Is this the end? The reason that I was so upset, I guess, as a fan and a fan of all three, is that he was not doing well on his serve. And to see that on grass, I mean, Roger serves really well. He's one of the greatest servers ever, and particularly finding his locations. But on grass, that's even amplified. And in the match, Felix had he was 3 of 15 on break points. So look at all those opportunities that he had to break. And Roger only had 5 aces to Felix's 13. He just wasn't getting enough free points on serve. He wasn't hitting his spots. And the look on his face was, I mean, being completely subjective here, if I could for a second, he looked for a minute like he was going to cry in the third set. And after the match, he said, quote, "I really started to get negative, and that's not how I am." And yeah, pretty much that was exactly what I saw. But then after I slept on it, I calmed down a little bit, and I read, a few reports about the match, and I read his comments, and he said, "This is really hard coming back from 2 knee surgeries. I'm constantly questioning it. I'm wondering if I feel a twinge of pain." And anybody who's come back from injury understands that. And that's true. And the good news, I think, is if he still cares about twinges of pain, that means he's trying to extend this. If he didn't care, he would just say, "Give me a cortisone shot and I'll go out there, and who cares if I blow up the knee." But he really does seem to be working hard and to be invested in extending his career, at least for the time being.
Well, I think you bring up a couple interesting points. One of them is the connection between injury and mental, and we talked about mental rust, but just the process of rehabbing and coming back, and how much work that takes, how arduous it is, how long that is, and to take the court and then to not be playing as well as you think you should be. You could just imagine just the negative thoughts compiling and compiling. But he seemed to be optimistic that it wasn't going to happen again. It's fascinating, though. It really was. It seemed like, as much as there were physical issues, and we can talk about that, such as the serve, it was very much the reason why that didn't look like the regular Roger is because he became so defeated so quickly.
Well, the game is so great. This is so what's so neat about tennis. Whether it's people like to say, well, it's all in the head. Well, everything is in the head. The brain makes all these decisions and propels these things, whether it's hitting the ball or shot selection. And again, and there's the clay gestalt, which is about the grind, and you're going to have to hit 2 or 3 or more shots per rally. Even, and as we talked about, even in the 0-4 rally on clay, you have to exert to generate the energy to have the ball do good things. Now we got the grass thing, and the grass thing is a little more like bumper pull. It's a little bit more like quick agility and flexibility and shot making. And when you see the opening, when the light turns green, you better strike right through it. I mean, when you have a break point and that second serve is a little shorter and a little slower than usual, you better hit it. So there's all this kind of like, signals you have to send to yourself. And of course, Federer has been a master of them on grass more than any surface. But even it kind of shows you, watching great players in their later stage sometimes even more reveals their greatness than their glory years, because you see, wow, even they a little off it, but then it is, wow, what a high level they played for so long. And so I think seeing this as Federer, seeing his humanity, makes us all obviously curious about what we're going to see in this best of 5 set matches at Wimbledon. These little preludes on grass are one thing, but now what occurs over a long one, and in grass particularly. Okay, Roger, now we got it on clay. We got it. We know you were just feeling your way and longer points, and here's Marin Cilic, and here, you just kind of work your way through it. Now it's grass. This should be your house. Let's see.
Yeah. But winning 3 matches, like, that's half the tour. So much of the tour would consider that a really, really, great run at a Grand Slam.
Yeah.
And like the prize money is enormous. Like, that's a big, that means you can play when you win 3 matches at a Grand Slam. That's all I can say. And obviously,
Hey,
that's not the bar for Federer.
So much the world thinks it'd be great to play one of those things. I mean, it's
right.
so fun. It's like,
Yes.
but the thing is, sports is graded on a curve.
Yeah. So again, that's not the bar for Federer, but for someone who is just feeling things out, it's kind of interesting because Felix also, when he's firing, when he's making his shots, he was moving forward well. He was making all his volleys, which is not always the case. His first serve was landing. He wasn't double faulting. His forehand wasn't missing. That version of Felix on a quick court, I think it's a top 15 player. So, I don't think that is the weapons wise, at least it's a top 15 player. Consistency is why Felix can't really break through into the top 15 for the last couple of years. But I don't think it's a excuse me, horrific loss for Federer, even from a levels perspective. I think the concern is that the common theme is that his serve hasn't really been working well in any of these matches. And I think that's something to just circle and continue to watch, because Cilic was kind of punishing the returns, and Basilashvili was all the way back at the beginning of the year. And I just think this is something that we now continue to see, where his serve isn't really working as well as he needs it to.
Well,
sorry, Joel. I did a
okay,
piece in 2018 on Federer where just in that year, if he won the first point of his service game, he went on to win the game. Like, it was something outrageous, like 97 to 98% of the time. Yesterday, that was falling off. He was really having that dominance on, if I win the first point, I got this. Or you've seen the 90-second service games from Federer before on grass. Nothing like that. I mean, he was really battling from the get-go on his service games. So not used to seeing that from Federer on grass, but like you said, look, man, I'm coming back from 2 knee surgeries, and I had a long time where I wasn't playing tennis.
so you got leg strength. This is the primary thing for serving well. And so,
Yeah.
right. And again, 5 miles here, a foot there, and the ability to win some easy points, and winning easy points makes it easier to win other points. I mean, all the things that the serve can accomplish, all the thing, and particularly for a player like Federer on grass. And yeah, so to see him lose to any player, those 6-2 in the decisive set, is a little concerning to see that going on, because the serve not doing things for him, not just as a point winner in its own. Yeah, and that stat about winning the first point. And so how many times do you see that Federer first point? Why do serve? Whether the serve itself does something or it opens it up for an easy forehand, 15 love, things start going. But now the return comes back. Even if he wins the point, he's got to labor hard. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I think I can't wait to see that Wimbledon draw.
Me too. It's going to be interesting for Federer. I agree that if I were to guess, none of us know this for a fact. Like, what's wrong with Federer's serve? Why isn't it um, as effective as we're used to seeing it? But I would guess that it's literally a matter of physical strength and just wearing down throughout these matches. And I don't even know if we can assume it's just the legs, right? Because the serve is just a full body kind of ordeal, where you have lots of core involved, and oblique and shoulder, and obviously the legs are a big part of it. So I would agree that it's physical. Amy?
Yeah. There will be people that say that, well, Federer doesn't rely on power as much, even though he's got a very powerful serve. He's a spot server. He can place it. Well, there has to be a certain baseline level of speed and spin, because if you just place a 30-mile-an-hour serve, it's going to get crushed. So I would agree that there has to be something physical, but it could just be rust. And maybe over time, as he works his way through Wimbledon, maybe he can pick up the pace and the physical.
Well, and also these other players, it's been a strange, 18 months since Federer left the Australian Open 2020, but they've been playing more. And so they've been building their returns and their things, and they're getting better. Felix is a better player than he was 18 months ago, and he's played more matches, so he's used. And I think also this amazing thing to say about Federer, a little bit of the aura. It's like, I'm not playing the resume. I'm playing the ball. and here's the ball, and here's a serve that's not quite. And again, and their instincts on grass. The guy like Felix, wow, I crack a return and suddenly I'm in control of the point. I mean, I think the whole seesaw of a point on grass is so different than clay or any surface. So how do you then do that? And again, the very opportunism and alertness that's made Federer so snap, crackle, and pop his whole career is a little less. In theory, it sounds, oh, the natural surface. But you know what? You better have everybody in the orchestra better be moving really, really in sync.
Yeah, the return is difficult. You're up at the net, and that's kind of a fast-paced, reaction-based thing. Like watching that match, and I think Wimbledon's a little bit slower than Halle, but like the ball comes fast. Like it's just not losing a lot of speed when it hits the court, and it really does feel very instinctual, and it feels very quick.
I'll give you an example, though, of something. Here's a thought when I think about Federer. I just thought of this example from history. In the spring of 1989, Martina Navratilova was feeling kind of burnt out, and she lost early at the clay tournament in Hilton Head. It's now Charleston. And then she started to work with Billie Jean King, and Billie Jean King started to help her, and they started to point, and she said, start thinking about Wimbledon 1990. Don't think about Wimbledon 89. She ended up getting to the finals in 89 anyway. But the point is, in other words, maybe the Federer notion of coming back in the spring of 21 and doing a little clay and doing this, maybe it's better thinking about Wimbledon 22. I mean, then of a long-term play instead of, I got the instincts, I got the game, I got the sweet hands, but maybe it's a longer-term play than just trying to win it in 21 or win it. Maybe it's just, he won't say he's trying to win it. He's going to say he wants to compete well and let the process go. But still, it's tough.
Can we address what Felix said after the match? That they asked him, "Hey, Felix, did you ever think you'd beat Roger?" And he said, "I didn't think he'd be playing. Are you kidding me? No, I didn't think I'd get a chance."
I think that was a compliment on balance. I mean, Felix just sort of said it, on the fly without really thinking it through, because you could take it as like, I'm just a kid and he's an old man. But it really is a compliment. And it's, I mean, look, Roger Federer just took a set off you. He very well could have beaten you, and he is a lot older than you. So it's kind of neat. If I were a member of the big three and I played somebody very young and the person said that, I used to idolize you, or I watched you when I was 5 years old, or whatever, it would, make me feel old, but at the same time, it would make me feel incredibly warm and accomplished. And that's probably how each of these guys feels when they play somebody like that.
Let's not forget to give Felix a Tony Award for the person in his corner, Tony Nadal, who has a good track record at dissecting Roger Federer. And granted, I know the main thing is Tony Nadal, Rafa, Roger on clay, but more importantly, knowing Tony Nadal, he says, here's how you read Roger's energy. Be aware of this. Keep attuned to that. He's going to do this. This will happen. He'll try to look to do this to jumpstart his game. So you better cover that wide deuce court serve. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And so when you have a chance, don't think about, now you're on grass. Don't think about when Roger serves that I just want to get the ball and play, because he's be all over you like a cat. So how do you make that happen? How do you serve to him? And granted, Felix is a whole different kind of player than Rafa. But what a good coach does is say, okay, how do I match your tools to this other guy? And at the same time, though, Tony Nadal has his own, at least a master's degree in Federer studies.
Yeah. I like that line, Tony, Toni award. Tony.
Yes.
The Tony Award.
It's good to see Felix finally getting some results with Tony on his team, because it took a bit. And I know at the beginning of a coaching run, normally at first the coach barely says anything and just observes. So now maybe we're seeing a little bit more active, but also the surface changed Felix made a final last week, and now he's still alive in Queens, unless something's
Gil,
changed.
one question though. Do you think, knowing what we've known about Tony and Nadal, knowing that he started with Felix during the clay season, do you think he just kind of, I'm just gonna sit and I'm just gonna observe? I mean, Tony Nadal, he's got.
You don't think for like 2 weeks? You don't think for 2 weeks he took a step back and just, first watched how he operated, and then he kind of stepped in and said more? No,
maybe half a step. I just think also when, again, remember, there's the coach. The coaching thing is two tiered these days. There's the day to day, and that person might be doing that. But when I bring in a senior consultant, which is what Tony Nadal more is, right? He's the senior consultant. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm not paying you to shut up. I know I want you to watch me, but I need your input. And again, Tony Nadal has a whole. I was almost imagining recently, kind of like writing a fiction novel about 50 bullet points about the wisdom of Uncle Tony and how he brings in. And some of the things, I think he would kind of delicately dollop it out to Felix in different bits and different pieces, because it fits into this whole matrix of Tony that we've come to know, which makes him he's one of the more, in the big three, if we were doing the movie of the big three, he's one of the key supporting characters, right? Isn't he?
Yes.
Yep, he is.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I defer to you on that. You're probably right. I can't be convinced that Felix's forehand is not influenced by Roger Federer's forehand. I can't be. So I want to know if we're on the same page there.
Are you saying that, sorry, it is influenced, or it's not? It is. Yeah. I think so. I had a little bit of deja vu yesterday watching that. I'm thinking like it should be reversed. But Roger was definitely getting a taste of his own medicine in those last 2 sets.
Yeah, why not? I mean, if there's a contemporary forehand maybe ever to imitate, even though Nadal's has its own special thing to it. But boy, if you were wanting to show someone here's a forehand. I mean, what's wrong with Federer's, man? That is just unbelievable. Yeah, and I think Felix is kind of sometimes searches for it on the forehand. I think it's easier. I think it's also easy to engage in mimicry on faster surfaces because you can attain more purchase. In other words, the imitation is going to work better because the surface is going to reward your effort to mimic, as opposed to if it's on a slower surface, you mean I'm going to mimic trying to just hit the ball consistently again and again. I mean, the offense, the positive feedback on a faster surface is greater. So I agree with you, Gill, about the Felix Roger forehand connection.
Yeah, and Roger's timing at the net was not great yesterday either. He missed some volleys and some half volleys. The same type of thing that you were talking about, Joel, with grass being that reactive surface where you've got to be able to hit, the half volleys, the touch, the squash shots, this, that, and the other. It just, Roger, didn't have that totally yesterday. That is not physical, I don't think. That he can get back.
But that is also, okay, since we are student types, clay is the term paper. The clay season is the term paper season. You put in your work, you go to the library week in and week out, and you eventually issue your paper Roland Garros. Grass is the pop quiz. Grass is a series of quick, all right, here we go. It's a pop quiz, really quick. What do you got? And you have to have those quick motor reactions. And that's really, that's not even homework as much as it's just experience in match play and then tournament match play. I mean, you talk about, that's why you see players like Novak playing doubles in a grass court event, just because they want the time on the surface to get.
Yeah, it can be more see ball, hit ball kind of thing, as opposed to, that's really good analogy to use the term paper, as opposed to when you're on clay and when you're learning on clay, you're really thinking about technique. How much am I going to get under this ball? You have all that time, and you don't have that time on grass.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pop quiz continues. It's also a short season, so we can go micro, we can go macro, very much so. Pop quiz, very good. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment if that floats your boat. Like the video for sure. That helps us out a lot. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.